Scott Fitzgerald. And who are you, old sport?
Gil. The same names as
As what?
Scott Fitzgerald and
Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald, the Fitzgeralds. Isn't she beautiful?
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Agelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey Joey, making friends can be hard, especially when you're a little girl who's sent alone to a foreign country and forced to mingle with a haughty and precocious girl who, at least at first, doesn't want anything to do with you. Our guest today has a remarkable new graphic novel that captures the awkwardness, emotional ups and downs, and self-discovery of this hard-won friendship.
We're delighted to chat with Janice Shapiro, an author and illustrator whose new graphic novel, Honoria, A Fortuitous Friendship, is published by Fantagraphics. Janice, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thank you.
Honoria is your first graphic novel, and it's a big one, nearly 350 pages. How did the book come about?
Well, 8 years ago, I had finished a graphic memoir, and I couldn't get it published. I got the chapters. I think all the chapters were published in literary journals and magazines and anthologies, but I couldn't get the book published. So I was trying to figure out what I should do next, and I came upon this article on my Facebook feed from The New Yorker that was published in 1962 by Calvin Tompkins about the Murphys. And that's Gerald and Sarah Murphy, who are prominent characters in the book, and it's their daughter is Honoria. And so I read that, and it just was, I don't want to leave this world. I want to stay here. So that's how it started, and I just kept reading and going down all these different rabbit holes and learning. I knew about the Murphys because when I was in high school, I was obsessed with The Lost Generation. And so they would come up in things that I would read and about that era, but I didn't really know about their children, and that really struck me is what I was really like taken with the idea of what would it have been like to be a child in that world. And so that's how it started.
Yeah, mentioning difficulty getting the first book published, how was your experience with Fantagraphics, which to me is the greatest of all publishers?
It was a dream. They're lovely to work with. They care so much about how the book looks, so and I worked with a wonderful designer on it, and Gary Groth was my editor, and he was a delight. It was wonderful from start to finish, and I felt so lucky that I was being published by them.
You live in the Bay Area, the epicenter of the underground comics movement of the 1960s and 70s. To my eyes, your drawings have a splendid underground quality. Were you influenced by that movement and maybe women underground creators like Diane Newman and Aileen Kaminsky-Crumb?
Yes, I love Aileen. She's one of my North Stars. And it was Aileen, Roz Chast, and Linda Berry probably were the most influential comics makers. And it had a lot to do with their style that it felt like it gave me, I don't have any background in art, so I felt like it gave me permission to try to draw, because there wasn't, I was never going to be an art crumb. I was never going to be like an extremely polished, beautiful artists, but those people are so expressive in such simple um way that I thought, well, I could maybe do this. And so they were hugely, hugely influential.
Honoria takes place in 1929 and centers on a young secular Jewish girl, Ida, whose parents are having marital issues and decide to send her to the south of France for the summer, where she stays with the family of her dad's old college friend, the aforementioned Murphys. What attracted you to this period?
Well, like I said, I first got in very, very, very interested in that era in high school. And I think what attracted me then was it was like the most appealing vision of adulthood. Here were these people that were creative and they seemed to be having so much fun. And, they put together this life and community in France that was sort of a really, really fostered reinvention and creativity and joy. And so I just loved it. And I and I'm way past being a teenager now, but throughout my life I will go back and reread those novels that came out of that era. Um And there I still have this, like, just this feeling that I'm seeing that when I'm reading it, I feel like I'm visiting this really remarkable time and moment. And so, I think it was very gratifying to go spend 8 years in it making this book.
A bunch of luminaries show up at the house in France: Zelda and F. Scott Fitzgerald, Pablo Picasso, Charlie Chaplin, Ernest Hemingway. There is much partying and frivolity, but also a certain sadness beneath the surface. The two girls in the story, Ida and Honoria, the daughter of the family Ida's staying with, see through it all. This obviously isn't an autobiographical comic, it's more like historical fiction, but it's very authentic. Were you drawing from your own experiences?
Uh, no. No, no, no. Uh, but the graphic memoir that I worked on that I wasn't able to get published is called Crushable: My Life in Crushes, and each chapter is about a different crush I had at different ages in my life. And so I feel like Ida shares my longing for something unattainable. And so at the beginning, that's Honoria. Like, she just has this extreme longing to win her friendship. So I think that's when I think about it, that's where I live the most in this story.
And as I mentioned, the Fitzgeralds figure very prominently in the story. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about their role in all of this and how their unusual and kind of disruptive relationships plays out in the story?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they come in and look, well, just to backtrack, in my story, the Murphys have lost a son the year before, and Honoria is really, really suffering from the loss. And the way that her parents are dealing with it is they're trying to recreate their summer life as it always was. They want to just not, not deal with their sadness. So I don't know, like, things that I read I mean, about the Fitzgeralds, it does seem like they were kind of truth tellers. They weren't going to be able to go along with the invented world that the Murphys were trying to sustain that summer. So that they come as sort of a a foe of what the Murphys, intentions are. So I feel like that's how they sort of work. The other thing that, I mean, as you know, tons and tons of stuff have been written and films made and all this stuff about the Fitzgeralds, but you've never seen them from a child's point of view. And Honoria is very enamored with them. She loves the Fitzgeralds, and she's completely forgiving of their not always great behavior. And I I always kind of imagined that they would be very, very kind to children. And so in my book, you see this side of the Fitzgeralds that was completely imagined, but I hope is true.
I think that's true. I mean, they certainly had trouble growing up themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that age bending aspect of it, felt very honest. They were just sort of reciprocating the love that the girls were giving them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ida also has an unusual Jewish awakening in the story. Could you tell us about that?
Well, like I said before, repression is kind of a theme throughout the book. The Murphys are trying to repress their grief about their son's death. And Ida, we only see Ida's family at the beginning, but she describes her house as a quiet house. And it's it's really an extremely repressed house because the parents' marriage is falling apart. There must be a lot of anger and sadness and rage, but they're trying to cover it up in front of Ida, so it's just silent. But the other thing that we learned that her parents have repressed is that they're Jewish. She's never known that, and she only learns it from Honoria. And this this revelation that Ida is Jewish kind of like sparks this both curiosity and curiosity and a need for them to really explore it more. And so then that's part of their relationship, and it is really a very significant way that they bond finally, is in their pursuit to understand and embrace and get what they're really needing, which is faith from the religion.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
A scene from the book that sticks out for me is when poet Ezra Pound, a notorious anti-Semite, visits the house and gives Ida her first taste of overt anti-Semitism. What led you to include this scene?
Back in high school, when I was first reading these authors, I was really taken aback by the overt anti-Semitism. I mean, it's front and center in a lot of the books. And I think it was just something that always kind of gnawed at me because I love it. I love the book so much. I love that world, and yet they were anti-Semitic, and obviously it was not super frowned upon because it's got in all these books. It seems to be pretty much an accepted prejudice of that time. So I wanted to just have an overt scene where that comes out, and Ezra Pound seemed like the perfect person to do it.
It's obvious that you did a lot of research on the book. Reading it, it felt very plausible. How were you able to balance what was real and what was more imagined in the story?
I did a lot of research. There are actually quite a few books about the Murphys. Obviously, there's a lot of books about the people around them. Um, what's really delightful is there's a lot of photographs, so I could get a good visual image of the people and the place and stuff. So that was really nice. But I have a friend who's a writer, and they were telling me that they would have to be completely truthful, like just not change a single thing about the the real people. But I can't do that. A huge I made huge changes in the Murphys' lives. They actually had 2 sons who both died. And I had to, you know, once it became my story, I couldn't live with that kind of sadness. I mean, of losing 2 sons was just too much for me to go into. So, I would once I made them my characters, I just took possession of them and just used, real moments where they seemed to fit into my story. Um, and I was more devoted to my story than their story. And the fact that it's told from Ida's point of view and she's completely made up, that kind of also gives me permission to just make them characters and make it fiction, just have them do what works best for the story.
Speaking of taking ownership of the characters, did you also get to do that with the other young character in the book, Philip?
I think I was trying to give Honoria a little bit of her brother back, and that's why she's, I think, so taken with him, and I think that he probably was very similar to Bouth.
Honoria is a fantastic debut graphic novel. Do you have a follow-up in the works?
Yes, I am actually working on now, the sequel, and it starts really pretty much where this one ends. So it picks up, Ida goes back to New York, and it's the end of August of 1929. And then in 2 months, something very catastrophic is going to happen to the world and to Ida's life and family. So it's a very different feel from Honoria, which was, at a summer ideal in the south of France. This is this is this is a grittier story. We kind of cut between Ida in New York and Honoria in France. Um, and I guess the motor of the story is they're trying to find a way to get back to each other. But in terms of Jewish themes, it does carry over in this book. In the next book, Ida gets involved with this Jewish bootlegger, and he's a very interesting character. One of the things he teaches her is the difference between a putz and a match. So she's there's her Jewish education continues.
And we'll be able to read that in about 8 years?
Oh, yeah. Oh my god, I'm hoping and praying this goes faster.
Well, thank you so much, Janice, for joining us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.